Yeah, Jill.
Lots of help.
Got it coming up on YouTube here.
Okay.
And then I'll hit the broadcast.
Okay.
Is setting up and redirecting. There we go. Up on YouTube here.
Okay.
And then I'll hit the broadcast.
Okay. Very good. And then do we have anyone that's a participant but not a panelist but a participant? They've been
Yes.
Looks like Plunkett's running for president.
Yeah, you look like George Patton.
Yeah.
Hey, they're not going to accuse me of being unpatriotic anymore on these damn calls.
That's right. Are we good to go, Amy?
I think so.
Okay,
Yes.
yep. See participants, I see attendees. We are good to go. Okay, welcome to the August 17th, 2020 regular meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Please join me in looking at Councilor Plunkett's screen for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America.
and to
To the republic
for
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and
and
justice for
for
all.
all. Very good. Amy, do you want to take attendance real quick?
Yes. President Garrett,
Present.
Vice President Traylor,
Present.
Councilor Burke, not present. Councilor Choi,
Here.
Councilor Culp,
Present.
Councilor Melton,
President.
and Councilor Plunkett.
President.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Amy. First on our agenda today is the approval of the memorandum of the August 3rd, 2020 regular meeting. Copy has been posted and was sent out to town council. Unless there is any objection, I will make a motion to approve that memorandum. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Plunkett first. Any comment on that? Amy, do you want to do a roll
Yes.
call on that?
President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Traylor,
Yes.
Councilor Burke is not present. Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
and Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Very good. The memorandum of the August 3rd, 2020 regular town council meeting is approved by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Next up, we have request to speak. Anyone wishing to speak can raise their hand electronically. Amy, I see you've promoted Mr. Triscari. I'm assuming he would like to speak. Mr.
Yes.
Triscari, I think you know the drill here. So name and address for the record, and 3 or 6 minutes, depending if it's you or you and your wife. And I'll start the clock after your address.
Yes, my name is Craig Triscari, 3270 Paddock Road, and I applaud you guys for standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for respecting the flag. I like the flag behind the one, Councilman Jason. Just one little suggestion. You have the technology. You can go ahead and go to that flag, have one person lead in the Pledge of Allegiance versus everybody leading, because you can hardly hear everybody talk at once. But again, thank you. As of August 17th, 2020, Van Trust has still failed to run an 8-inch water line into Saratoga after November 2008 ordinance passing. Van Trust is in violation, total disregard of Zionsville official commitment letter. It seems this company is incapable of holding to a commitment, and the board fails to enforce our own public commitments to the community of Perry Township, Zionsville rural area. The continued percentage of industrial giveaway is inappropriate. The community should be disgusted or horrified by the tax giveaway of 56% on average for 10 years. There are several questions I received from the community in the last few weeks. Can we still fire weapons in our rural residential property? You are still able to do what rural residential allows. Call the county sheriff for more details and be safe. Can we still have fire pits? You have the same rights in rural residential. Call county sheriff for further information. Can we sue Van Trust for our well damage? Talk to a lawyer, but any person can file a small claims court. It is about $87 to $157 to file yourself, and you are not required to have a lawyer. There is a limit on small claims in Indiana. I think it's $6,000 for damages. That is per incident. You can call 765-482-3510 Small Claims Court for more information. How do we stop the trucks from parking on Indianapolis Road and 400? Call the county sheriff. They will get a hold of the appropriate town law enforcement to come out and chase them away. Best solution is the town have no parking through those dangerous roads, but utilize the town police resources to get trucks moved, and hopefully they will get the message. County Sheriff's number is 765-482-1412. If you plan to buy a home within Zionsville address, be very cautious. The leadership doesn't abide by their comprehensive plan, nor do they care about your property value. Homeowners on 421 or near the highway look to reduce your taxes to Zionsville based on the reckless development. The leadership, to include the town council team, has provided zero value added to the greater rural Zionsville community and homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Triscari. Is there anyone else? What? Yes, I heard a
President
voice.
Garrett.
Yeah.
It's me here. Before Mr. Triscari moves off, if he said several times that there was a tax giveaway and that the amount that we're charging is on average 44%. Mr. Triscari, you have my email through the town council website. If you could send me your calculations, I'm happy to admit if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that it is in that amount of tax abatement. So feel free to send me your calculations. And like I said, I'm happy to admit when I'm wrong about that, but my calculations don't show the same thing as we discussed before.
I would just say average out what you have on your document. That's all you have to do is just add it up and then divide it by 10. That gives you the percentage.
I did, and I don't come up with the same figure you did.
Okay, I'll send that to you. It's 56, not 44 is what I have, but I'll send that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. And I think that 5644 is the same number, right? 56 is the giveaway. 40. I think Councilman Choi, you were representing 44% is the income, right? So it nets out to the 100. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised to speak, so we will move on to old business. We've got an ordinance to authorize the use of purchasing cards. This is ordinance number 2020-07. This is the second reading. I believe we've got our CFO.
She is not, I'm not seeing her here.
All right. I know that we talked about this last meeting, so I don't know if there are additional questions, and if there are and they cannot be answered, this one may not. We could table this just depending on councilors' comfort level with this piece. So any questions, outstanding questions that councilors had on this where they would not be comfortable in voting on this for a second reading? All right. If there are none, I am comfortable with what we're trying to achieve here. So I'll make a motion to adopt this ordinance 2020-07 on final reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Vice President Traylor. Amy, can you do a roll call on this?
Sure. President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Traylor,
Yes.
Councilor Burke is not present, Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
and Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 2020-07 is adopted on final reading with a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you, Amy. Moving on to new business, we've got a confirmatory resolution of the town of Zionsville, Indiana for the designation of an economic revitalization area and approval of a real property tax abatement agreement. This is for Prologis LP. This is a public hearing. This is resolution number 2020-11. Mr. Price, I believe you're representing Prologis on this matter. See, you're promoted, Mr. Price, but you're not. There you go. I just saw your mute button go off.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
We've got you.
Okay. I'm trying to. There
There
we
you
go.
go. Yep. Now we see you.
One cup of coffee in this morning, so I apologize. Good morning to you all. As introduced, Matt Price with an attorney at Denton's with an address of 10 West Market Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm here this morning on behalf of Prologis. With me is Amy Zepka, who's also participating as an attendee this morning. You may recall that at the August 3rd meeting, the council unanimously adopted a declaratory resolution to establish an economic revitalization area and set forth the process for holding this public hearing this morning. This is in regard to the Prologis project at the northwest corner of County Road 550 and State Road 267, the rezoning for which was approved earlier this summer. The project entails a little over $47 million in anticipated new real property improvements to the town of Zionsville, so it presents a very significant addition to the town's tax base. The abatement being requested is, as you all have vetted and studied over the last this past year, and then some of you have vetted this over multiple years, is the standard tax deduction relative to a logistics oriented facility. So it's a market standard abatement request. We have properly noticed this public hearing, and Amy and I are available to answer any questions that you have. And I know Prologis is anxious to get started with their project. Thank you.
Matt, we're sort of speaking on the same theme at this public speaking component today. That there was a comment about, we're giving away too much, and whether it's 56% or 50% or whatever the number is, let's just say it's 50%. If the town decided, you know what, that is too much, we're only going to give away 30% of a tax abatement on a 10-year schedule, what would that do to this projects like these that we're seeing if we had our own schedule that was not the norm and was less generous to prospective developers?
It would effectively prevent this project from going forward. What we discovered over the last couple of years is that there's a requirement essentially in the marketplace to have a uniform offering. Many of these projects, and it's accelerated as we've discussed in other meetings through this pandemic. Many of these projects are done on a speculative basis. I don't really like that word because it suggests, gambling or something like that, but it's really not. What the requirement is that you really have the space available when a party needs it. And so what they need to be able to do is go into the marketplace, respond to an RFP and say, we're offering this property on equivalent terms to what other competing properties are offering in communities elsewhere in Indiana and really across the Midwest. And so if you're offering something different or lesser than, then you're effectively not given a fair review through the RFP processes that are being conducted really all the time in this marketplace. So it's really a predicate to moving forward with the investment.
And in this case, competing is literally across the road in Whitestown or across the road north in Lebanon. So it's not like there is a proximity advantage that we have. And I'm assuming the name Zionsville, much as I am proud of it, from a logistics distribution center, that they're not going to overlook the financial differences for either of those components. Is that true?
It is true, yes. And I would say it's to your point, it is strikingly apparent that way when we're competing, for example, with Whitestown, which is literally, in this case, in one instance, the neighboring property to the north, which has this abatement. And so you're competing with your next door neighbor, but I can also say you're competing on down I-65. You're competing in the Louisville market. You're competing in Columbus, Ohio, and to be in the competitive marketplace, you have to have an offering that is equivalent. And if you're not, then what you're effectively saying is you're not going to compete for this type of business or this type of investment.
That makes sense. Councilors, any other questions or any questions, I should say, for Matt or for Amy, who's also on standby here? Well, as you're thinking about potential questions, as noted, this is a public hearing. I'm going to quickly share my screen here. Hopefully you can see this. This is just proof of publication. Normally I wave this around in the air for everyone at the meetings to see, but we have proof publication for this. With that, I will open the public hearing for anyone that may want to speak on this specific matter, and only the specific matter. Please raise your hand virtually and we will call on you. Do not see any hands being raised on this matter, so I will close the public meeting. Councilors, with that, back to you. Any other questions for Mr. Price on this or for Amy on this matter? I know we've seen a few of these, so. Okay, if not, then I would take a motion on this.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Councilor Choi, is that Councilor Plunkett, I think, the second there?
Yep.
Amy, can you roll call this for me?
It's President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Milton,
Yes.
and Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Resolution 2020-11 passes with a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Couldn't be happier to have Prologis here in Zionsville. Thank you for considering us. Thanks, Matt. Next up is an ordinance amending the salary ordinance of the town of Zionsville, Indiana for the calendar year 2020. This is ordinance 2020-08. Mr. Lance, I believe you were the selected victim for this one.
Yes, thank you and good morning. I'm pleased to introduce this item. And Amy, if you see Barry Cook on your list, you may perhaps promote him or prepare to promote him, who could speak to some operations within the wastewater department should there be any questions. This position in the salary ordinance amendment functions essentially as a second in command to the wastewater department superintendent. It has been vacant for some time since the last employee to hold this title left to pursue other opportunities, which is why it was not included in the 2020 salary ordinance last year. There was not a person that was deemed qualified for this position. As you may have seen on a recent Tuesday talk that Amanda sends out, Danny Stogsdill, currently the plant and lift station manager, completed his Class 3 operator certification from IDEM, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, which is the governing agency for wastewater operations. He is now recognized as an operator for a Class 3 plant, a full operator, which is what we have, a Class 3 plant, but more importantly is now authorized to file reports with IDEM on behalf of the town for either routine or other report needs. In recognition of this advanced certification, the administration, Barry Cook, Superintendent Barry Cook, and I believe it is important to promote Mr. Stogsdill in both pay and title commensurate with his increased duties, authorities, and responsibilities. As important, though, is the need to retain vital quality staff, and Mr. Stogsdill is now quite marketable in the wastewater industry. At this point, I'll turn things over for questions, and if Barry is available and live, perhaps he could fill in any questions you may have. And I would ask that the council consider suspending your rules and adopt this on first reading.
Oh, Barry's alive. I see him in the meeting at least. Real quick there with that last note, just so council's familiar what Mr. Lance has said in terms of adopting in this meeting. Because of this being an ordinance, it would typically take 2 meetings to do this. However, we have the opportunity to suspend the rules. In this case, it would allow us to suspend the rules and pass it today if we were all in agreement, which would allow us to make these changes immediately rather than having to wait 2 weeks and make them. And there is precedent for doing this. We've done this before for positions, I believe, in the streets department, Lance, as well as economic development, when we've got a candidate that we don't want to lose out on. So that's the reasoning behind that. Any questions on what Mr. Lance presented, or any questions for Barry on the operational side of the house?
Just a question regarding the ordinance itself under section 3. There is just a short little sentence there: repealing of conflicting ordinances, the provision of all town ordinances in conflict with the provision hereof, if any, are of no further force or effect and are hereby repealed. Just being a first time kind of going through this process, that caught my eye as to what conflicts there may be, and if this presents any problem. I'm guessing no, but I just wanted to cover it.
We
Heather,
put
do you
that
want-
in, yep. We typically have that language in all of our ordinances, as sort of standard boilerplate. But specifically for this one, you passed a salary ordinance in the fall. So it would repeal the section that we're dealing with wastewater and replace it with this new section. But it's typically a catch-all provision as well, to make sure that this language takes precedent over anything that might exist anywhere else. We don't have any other spots where it exists except for the salary ordinance, which we're amending in this ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Councilors, any other questions on hows, what's, or whys of this?
I've got, Councilor Plunkett, I've got a question. This is probably more procedural than anything. I mean, I appreciate you pointing out that this is not something that was a position that was voted on in the salary ordinance. I do see that we did that in 2019, so it was a position that was already there. We're not necessarily creating a new position for the town payroll, so to speak. I guess my question is, if this is a position that's needed and we desire to have it within any department, is there any reason why we don't have those positions on the salary ordinances when we vote initially, as opposed to going back and having to do changes to the ordinance later? And I guess my point is, why wouldn't we have this in the budget for 2020 and then just not fill the role and have that surplus basically roll the next year, as opposed to having to do salary amendments regularly?
Yeah, Councilor Plunkett, that's a very good question. And typically we do that. I know within my department, we constantly have people moving around when we hire new people in. So we typically include all of those in the salary ordinance. This was under the directive of the past administration, who felt for this particular position, if no one was qualified, why have it? I can't speak to that departure from kind of our standard protocols, but we typically do. If we have a position, we typically put it in the salary ordinance, understanding there's a good likelihood that it could be filled throughout the year. So I don't have a good answer for you, but that's a great question.
Okay.
I was gonna say the same as Lance. Typically, we have had all of the positions for each department that we desire to have, on the salary ordinance. And only if we've had, a change in salary during the year have we brought back amendments. So it is, to Lance's point, a departure, and I'm not sure why it wasn't included previously. We did fund the position, so the money as part of the budget was there. And so, it's a departure from our normal routine, I think, not having it there.
Okay. Thank you.
I think to Councilor Plunkett's point or question, perhaps with the new administration or with this coming budget that hopefully we're going to learn about here soon, that we would go back to that old way of funding positions that we think we're going to need. I think it's fair to, surprise is the wrong word, but doing this in August when it should have been around all the time, even if it takes a long time to find someone that is highly specialized, I think it's just a good best practice so that everyone knows what's coming up and it doesn't look like we're creating a bunch of new jobs mid-budget year. Heather, real quick, you mentioned that we funded it, but it was not identified. How do we fund something that wasn't identified?
Yeah, you might, Lance, I think maybe would better be able to
Lance,
answer that.
could you talk about that?
Yeah,
That was
absolutely. Although they are related, they are distinct and independent from each other. So as you know, the budget begins about mid-year for the following year. So anything that we can foresee needing funded is included in the budget. And in this case, all positions were included in the wastewater department. However, the salary ordinance is not adopted till later in the year. So Barry had submitted funding for the position in the August, September timeframe. But when it came around, the ordinance is typically, November, December, towards the end of the year. So the money had put in place, and then for whatever reason, the administration last year decided not to include this in the ordinance. So they're related but independent tasks.
And Lance, real quick too, I mean, so if we're now filling a position that's been funded for the year. What happens to that 8 months of money that's been sitting here? Is it reallocated to other things that comes through council?
Can be reallocated through a reappropriation. We typically do that for wastewater, although under state statute as a utility is not required, but in the guise of transparency, the desire for transparency, those are typically handled. So if he wants to move money around, that would be an action coming before this council. If it's not necessary and not needed, it would just roll back into the budget and be considered under as revenue under next year's budget.
Councilors, any other questions? All right, well, I'm going to lead us through this process if council is okay with this, of a three-step process. There will actually be 3 votes here, assuming that the second vote passes. The first is we would do this anyways, which would be a motion to introduce. So I will make a motion to introduce this ordinance. Is there a second on this? A second from Councilor Melton. Amy, you have to do a lot of roll calling here, so.
President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Sorry, finding the unmute button. Yes.
okay, Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Motion to introduce ordinance 2020-08 on first reading passes with a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The second step that we need to take is a motion to suspend the rules, which effectively means that we're suspending the rules on this vote, allowing us to make a second vote if this were to pass. So I'll make a motion to suspend the rules. So a second on that.
Second.
Second from Councilor Culp. Amy, we'll do this a second time.
President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the motion to suspend the rules passes with a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Last, we then have a motion to adopt. I'm making a lot of motions. I'll open it up if someone else wants to make it. Otherwise, I'll do it. All right, I'll make the motion to adopt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. This would be a motion to adopt on a final reading. I think I heard Councilor Choi first. Amy, last time, I promise.
Okay. President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
Yes.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton,
Yes.
Councilor Plunkett.
Yes.
Very good. Ordinance number 2020-08 is adopted with a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Lance, real quick. Who is the employee that, remind me again, that passed the level 3 certification?
This is Danny Stogsdill. I believe he's been with the town about 8 years.
Good. Well, kudos to Danny. I mean, I'm sure that is given how hard it is to find folks to do this, I'm sure that is not an easy certification and takes a lot of time, probably after hours. So good for him. I'm happy to be promoting from within, and good for him for taking the initiative to do it. He's earned it. So
Thank you for those words and for your actions this morning.
yep, let's get him started. Okay, other matters. Any counselor have any other matter they'd like to talk about here today? All right, then we can make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We got a
Second.
First from Councilor Plunkett, second from Councilor Choi. Amy, last time, I promise.
President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Trailer,
Yes.
Counselor Choi,
Yes.
Counselor Culp,
Yes.
Counselor Melton,
Yes.
Counselor Plunkett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. We are adjourned by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Our next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020 at 7:00 p.m. That's Tuesday because Labor Day is on that Monday. We will determine at that time the need if it's going to be an electronic meeting or an in-person meeting, although candidly, I suspect this will continue as an electronic meeting. If that is selected as the means, members of the public will have the right to attend the town council meeting via Zoom link as well as following on YouTube. Counselors, I hope you have a great week, staff as well, and we'll talk soon.